Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the first round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup, which took place in Antwerp, and with me here to do that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah! We also have a live audience here of a couple of 15-16s from the block at Eurocross Academy who are busy packing their bikes right now, so if you hear any sound in the background, that is their hard work. They fly back tomorrow. We raced in Emmen, but the big guns raced in Antwerp, where it was Laurens Sveek who had the fastest start of the men's race. He was leading for, I would say, about 20 minutes, putting the pressure on the rest, but then the Pauwels Sauze guys took over. Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout both took turns attacking. Eventually, Iserbyt got away somewhat with the help of Van Toerenhout. Sveek and Van der Putten were the main drivers in the chase, but they couldn't close that gap to Iserbyt. Iserbyt took his second win of the weekend after he already completed a tactical win in Kortrijk on Saturday. Second place went to Sandman Laurens Sveek ahead of Michael Van Toerenhout, who finally shows some good form. This is his, I would say, third big podium of the season, not counting his third place in Kortrijk. Issam, it was the weekend of Pauwels Sauze taking a 1-3 in both men's races, also in Kortrijk. Both days team tactics played a role, but on Saturday I could somewhat understand the criticism. Roodhoofd was doing a bit of bashing. They were a bit more extreme there, definitely not the worst we've seen. But I also think if you win twice in the weekend, and especially here in Antwerp, then you can't really say that Iserbyt was lucky to be in a 2v1 situation throughout the weekend, because when he got away, Sveek and Van der Putten had the opportunity to close it, but they didn't have the legs. Iserbyt was also just very eager this weekend, and he got it done. After last week, I was shitting on the team quite a bit in the podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, we were shitting on the team with reason. It was the results that they were booking was not great at all, and I think that with this weekend, I think the pressure was maybe a little bit there. Iserbyt was talking about pressure from within the team, and he is also reading the news, and he read the articles, he read the criticism, and I think they bounced back perfectly this week. And what a way to do it! An important week for sure, because with the first round of the World Cup, you make a statement. He's ready for the World Cup. He wants to, do well in the classification, and I think that today was a statement for the team. The team tactics in Antwerp played a role, but as you said, I think Laurens Sveek is someone that if he sees it, he is definitely going to try and work it out and get in front of Van Toerenhout, but he just didn't have the legs at that moment, and he was not even able to pass Van Toerenhout for a while. And then when he passed him, it almost felt like he kind of knew it's going to be for second, because the gap was there, and there was not really an intention of closing the gap. They were just continuing with the race, and they understood at a certain point that it was going to be for second. And I think for Iserbyt, it's a great moment for him. He bounced back, and for him, it's now a case of trying to hold on to the form that he has now and capitalize on it, because there are quite some races coming up, and if you can use this momentum in your advantage, I think that would be great for Iserbyt. So yeah, it was a good outing for Pauwels Sauze, a good outing for Iserbyt, and also Van Toerenhout, who scores a double podium this weekend.
So two things stand out for me from the post-race interview. First of all, Iserbyt did, as you said, mention the pressure from within the team. He said that the management gave him and Van Toerenhout a kick under his butt for this weekend, that it was time to perform, that they were performing below their standards. That's also what we went over last week. And then second of all, what you say about the momentum, that Iserbyt said the last few weeks were hard. I wasn't really feeling myself. I was making a lot of mistakes. My confidence wasn't really there. And he was in a negative spiral. And that's something we've talked about a bit this season already, especially in relationship to Sveek. Last year, Sveek was the one in a negative spiral. He didn't get a win. The season before, he was great. And it was like, when is Sveek going to get a win? When is Sveek going to get a podium? When is he going to be good? And with Iserbyt, it was kind of getting the same. When is he going to get a big win? Okay, he won in Heerde, but it's an exact goal, so who really cares? And now he gets the win. Yesterday's win was a good morale boost. And then here he gets his big televised, just a big win. in the World Cup. He gets to lead it, and for Paul Sousa, this is the most important classification. For Golazzo, it isn't, and with Golazzo, I mean the Balwaza Trek Lions. For them, the X2O trophy is the most important, but for Paul Sousa, this is the most important classification. For Zweek, this is probably also the most important classification. This is where they want to perform, and they get off super well. And for Iserbyt, it's a matter of continuing this. Zweek, who we talked about in the negative spiral last year, has obviously completely broken free of that. Issam, I will give you the credit. You predicted that Iserbyt win. He got that win. I had Zweek. He was second. It wasn't really close in the end. But I do think Zweek rode quite decently today. He was on the start list for Kortrijk, decided to not start there. Wise decision. I don't really see why anyone would ride Kortrijk at this point. Everyone is tired. Everyone is hunkering for that training camp in Spain. Van Toerenhout has been to train to Spain. You can see a small boost. Zweek has also been doing that with some midweek training. The weather has been quite bad this week with a lot of snow and rain in the lowlands. The sun hasn't come out once. Today was the first time I saw the sun, I think, in 4 or 5 days. And it pays off for them. And on the other hand, you also have riders who are hunkering for that training camp. Nijs was not there today. Van der Haar always has it in this part of the season that he's eager to get on that flight to Spain, eager to get to the sun. Toon van der Bos is another rider I imagine is hoping to do that because this was a good course for him. He was 18th. And that's also why the World Cup starting in this part of the season is so strange. Because a new classification starts, but at the same time, the riders are feeling like drained. For them, the second part of the season will only start in Namur on the 15th of December.
Yeah, totally. And I think we saw that today clearly. Just riders that faded dramatically in a way, and some riders that were able to push through. And we are coming in that phase that we somewhat talked about already for a number of episodes, that, you know, the riders will now make those decisions of skipping a weekend, going on a trains camp for a week or 2 weeks, and that's what we're going to see. I mean, that's how it's been going for a couple of seasons already, and we are coming to that phase again. And from there on, we can draw conclusions again of riders when they come back from a training camp. And but for now, it's, you know, it's still tricky to, you know, to pick this as the standard for the rest of the season. You know, there's still a couple of races that we need before we can decide a little bit more who is where and what is going to be the standard for the remainder. But we definitely got some confirmations that the form of Iserbyt is there. He is in a very good shape, and he's there for the entirety of the season. And that with others, that the form is there, that the hope is there. Zweek rode very well today, I have to say, and I didn't expect it entirely. You did it a little bit more. The sand played a bigger role, but I still think that he did a very good job. And we got some answers today of certain question marks, but there are still definitely some questions that have to be answered with all the training camps that are going to be done by the riders.
Some question marks have been erased, but they've just been replaced by new ones. Like, what does this 7th place of Pim Ronhaar tell us? Is he really on the up now, or is it just a temporary peak? Like, can he start training consistency together? He gave an interview saying maybe he'll only be back at his best next season. He doesn't really have a clear indication of where he stands or where he will go. This is always, these 3 weeks is some very weird part in the season, especially with the World Cup starting now. It makes it even stranger, but this is Antwerp, and next week we go to Dublin, and you know that many people have their flights booked from Dublin to Spain. They will do Dublin, some won't, but most will. They'll do Dublin, and then they'll fly to Spain, and they'll skip the Italian World Cup, just like we discussed in our preview, and they'll train there for 2 weeks, and then come back for Namur. And then from Namur, the season kind of restarts, because this week we'll find out what Van Aert and Van der Poel are doing. And even without those guys, we get the Christmas mania with so many races. I don't know how many races there are this year, but it's even crazier than last year. Just race, Christmas, race, Besançon, Diegem. It just keeps going. And that is really, in that period, you'll start like being able to draw your conclusions. Like, that's the time you need to be there. If you've not performed so far, your season is not lost. But if you don't start performing in Namur, and it's always very hard to turn it around in this short amount of time, but if you don't hit those Christmas races with good form, then you're also not miraculously going to turn that around for the national championships and the world championships. That's when you need to be there, and we're seeing signs of some riders on the up. As you said, Sveik was good. The sand did play a bigger role than I expected. Last year it was quite packed. This year it was definitely a lot more loose. At the same time, it also required a lot of power. I felt like it was quite heavy at the same time. So he looks good. He's been looking good. Van Toerenhout surprised me a bit, but perhaps the biggest surprise to me was Joran Wiesure in fourth. This is the first time in a month that he's gotten a real good race together. Of course, he wasn't horrible last week in Hamme and Merckxplas, but this is like the first time since Overijse a month ago that he really shows, okay, I'm a contender that can podium a lot of races.
I think he needed some time, and the inconsistency was always going to be there this season, considering the age and the inexperience in a way. But it was an encouraging day, and I think that it was, again, somewhat close to his top level that we have seen so far this season. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can just add that percentage or two, and if he gets a race that suits him a little bit more. Today definitely you could use the power if you have it. We might get some courses where the circumstances will be even worse than what we got today, and in that case I think that if he has a good day, Wiesure is definitely one that could surprise, could go for a podium, but he needs a little extra, and the question will be, is that going to be there in the crucial moments, and when the circumstances are going to be there, when the rain is going to be there, and we get the courses that are a bit more, that are a bit tougher than what we got today with the sand, and a very fast course in a way as well.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Iserbyt tops all Belgian top 5 with Sveik, Van Toerenhout, Wiesure and Van de Putte. Don't think we need to go over Van de Putte. Kind of said it last week already. I think he's racing a bit too much. I don't think he should have raced Kortrijk on the Saturday. But he still finished ahead of Dutch duo Lars van der Haar and Pim Ronhaar. Toon Aerts managed an 8th place ahead of Philippe Oorts and Kevin Kuhn, who completed the top 10. I would briefly like to go over some of the Baloise track lions. I already mentioned that Ronhaar remains a question mark, but Van der Haar and Issam, those are definitely riders who are looking desperately for their training camps in Spain. Their form has not really been great. Nice, just like last week, struggling a bit. He also apparently hit the wooden pole at the pit zone, hitting that with his shoulder. Apparently quite a bad bruise on there, but nothing too serious. And for Van der Haar, it's always in this part of the season that he starts to decline a bit after a good start.
Yeah, I think for Van der Haar it wasn't a dramatic race, but it was. He just didn't have enough to play a role for a top 5, just finished outside of it. And I definitely think that he is up for a training camp and wants to change it up a little bit. But for Nice, it was a little bit more dramatic. And I don't know if hitting the pole with a shoulder, if that was his biggest issue today. I think that the legs were also not really there. He showed himself at first, but he got passed quite quickly by some guys and wasn't really able to defend positions at a certain point. And then you already know that it's going to be difficult because positioning was important in some of the sections. And when you give your position away the way he did, you know that it's more than only, not having the best of legs. There is more to it. And I think that he's going to use those 2 weeks that he booked in terms of a training camp. And then the question will be, how will he return? Where will he focus on in the training camp? And that is going to be interesting because he is definitely one of the guys that we have seen so far this season that can battle for victories. And the question will be he be able to come back and reach that level again, which normally should be the case, but you never know.
Then I would like to mention Kevin Kuhn. The Swiss rider has heavily targeted the start of the World Cup, being quoted way earlier in the season that this is when he wanted to be in form. He did decent today, I would say. I wouldn't say this is one of the best courses for him. I would categorize him as a rider that does better on the more muddy courses, as evidenced by his 6th place in Dendermonde last year. This is a decent start for him, and it's encouraging that he didn't completely blow up like he often does. He wasn't too far off Toon Aerts, just 15 seconds. I think it's a really good start to the World Cup for him, and hopefully he has a better season than last year, because last year he, of course, started very well, but then completely burned out in the Christmas period and didn't really perform anything, didn't even win the Swiss title. So hopefully that's something that he has improved upon this year. Then the women's race, Issam. Here also some of our question marks got replaced by periods or by exclamation marks, and Fem van Empel definitely made an exclamation mark behind her name this weekend, winning both races. We were wondering in which way is Fem van Empel going to come back. Will it look the same as the start of the season, or will it be more like we saw last year? It's maybe a bit premature to draw conclusions, but today was a very dominant performance. She pretty much dominated from start to finish, went away after Schreiber had a good start super early and was never really threatened. She took the win, 30 seconds ahead of Brandt, with Schreiber completing the podium. What does this tell you? Van Empel did a long training block. She is now racing for 2 weekends. Then she's going to go training in Spain again and hopefully finalize her form for the remainder of the cross season. Can we draw conclusions that Van Empel is heading the right way, or is it too early? Because Brandt had a bad start, is not feeling as fresh. Alvarado has apparently been sick. What's your takeaway on Van Empel this weekend?
I think she returned a little better. I definitely agree with you that you have to put this a little bit in the perspective as well. Brandt didn't have the greatest of starts. It's not the course where Brandt can excel to the extent where she can threaten Van Empel, or even close that gap that was there from the start. But I still feel that she definitely looked somewhat better than when she went away for training camp and before that. I think that it's an improvement for sure. And the question will be, will she maintain it? As you say, I think she will do Dublin, and then she won't be showing up in Italy. And from there on, looks to be that she will pick her races, and she said that she was going to commit to the entirety of the World Cup, with the exception of obviously that Italian race. But I think that it's heading in towards the right direction. And let's not forget, Van Empel she doesn't need to be in the greatest form right now. It needs to be enough for victory. And I think that if you look at it this way, I think that is definitely, that is there. The form is there for victory, and the form is there to be able to win against an Alvarado and against a Brandt. And I think that for her is at the moment the most important thing. And from there on, she has to build towards the best form for cyclocross in terms of this season at the Worlds. That's going to be her biggest goal, and there is where she has to show her best form. And I think that is going to be interesting to see if she's going to be able to do that with the season planning that she's been doing.
Yeah, I agree that this result needs some context, Issam, because as we just went over in the men's race, freshness is super important in this part. And Brandt said she isn't as explosive as she was, and that definitely played a role today. Van Empel didn't race the past 3 weekends, and that obviously gives you a freshness boost in this important part of the season. It's really like the start of the season. You really need to unscrew these results. And I don't want to repeat myself too much, but really in the Christmas period, you have an real idea of who is where, because then it doesn't matter how much you raced before, you need to deal with that. Some riders we've went over, I think, raced too much. For Donschot, I still had some hopes for her on this course, especially when I saw how the stand was, but clearly she's being tired. She's being worn out at this point. She's raced a lot. She started racing early September, did all those British races, did a couple of Spanish races, and then raced a bunch of big races. Her form is not what it was anymore. And then you have a bunch of fresh riders coming in. Van Empel is one of them, but Schreiber and Vash and Bakstedt are also fresher, and that helps them on courses like this. And that is an important thing to factor in. It is inherently a role in this part of the season. I do think that Van Empel is slightly better, but again, I want to remain cautious because there are these other circumstances. Alvarado has been sick, Brandt has been racing a lot and is getting tired. So I think we'll be hopefully getting some good battles, especially when Puk Pieterse returns, which is in 3 weeks from now in Namur. I'm really excited for that. I hope that we can get some good battles between her and Van Empel, and hopefully Brandt and Alvarado can be in the mix. And today we also saw a very strong Schreiber. what we said in the preview, or at least what I said in the preview, if something happens to Van Empel, Brandt or Alvarado, Schreiber will be the first to capitalize. That happened. She rode a really good race today. Start played a crucial role in the race with that early bottleneck. And from there on, she rolled. And it was a podium just like last week in Merckxplas. And it's really encouraging to see her make another step, being able to fight like with those riders, not occasionally, but on a consistent basis.
I'm not someone that really, I wouldn't say appreciate it, but I always struggle a little bit with riders that start very fast but cannot hold on to that pace in a way and then find themselves fading quite quickly at the end of the race. But I think that this for her just it paid off today. It paid off big time, and I think that it was, as you said in the preview, she was definitely one of the riders that if she has good legs and she is able to start well, which is almost a certainty in a way, maybe she can do something with that start, and she did just that. She got a great gap with Van Empel, and then from there on, she started to fade a little bit. Brandt got past, but that was it. She was unable to just maintain that third place, and I think she faded a little bit too much in the end. That's okay. That was still enough for a podium, and she maximized this race, in my opinion. I think that there was no more than a third place in it for her, and that it was a very good outing for Schreiber, really. And she got a course where you can use the power, as we have said already, but you still have to do it, and you still have to have the legs. She is a little bit fresher than some of the competitors, but you still have to do it, and I think that she did a great job.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Behind Van Empel, Brandt and Schreiber, we find Sarah Casasola ahead of Seindel Carmen Alvarado, who, as mentioned, was sick this week. Catablanca Vash ended 6th ahead of Zoe Backstedt and Inge van der Heijden. 9th place went to Laura Verdonschot, with Annemarie Worst taking 10th. Couple of notes here, Issam. Let's start with Casasola. She surprised me. What about you?
Yeah, she did, in a way. I have to say that she was struggling at the start, and I thought, oh God, this is not going to be a top 5 at this rate. This is, she will fall short of that. But I think that at the end of the race, I think a lot of the ladies got I wouldn't say tired, but it was hard to hold on to the pace that they were putting. It is a very honest course, and I think that Casasola, just the race came to her a little bit more at the end of it. She was able to use the power, and I think that in the end, 4th place on this course is definitely a great result, in my opinion. I think that podium was not possible, and to be honest, I wouldn't have put her really in a top 5. I thought that was going to be quite difficult, but she managed. I think that it was a very strong 4th place, and there is still a lot of work that she could do with the sand, because it wasn't great, and technically as well, but she manages, and that is the most important thing. She at least maximizes what she has. The legs are good, and she compensates with that, and I think that it was a surprising good outing for Sarah Casasola. I think she can be quite happy with this result today.
So while Casasola was surprising, I think Vash was also slightly surprising. I'm torn, because do I conclude that Casasola, Vash and Backstedt were slightly surprising, or do I conclude that the likes of Van der Heijden, Verdonschot, Van Alphen, Betsema, Bentveld were disappointing? I feel like they were in their opposite positions. I would have expected to see those riders, Verdonschot, Van der Heijden, probably Worst up there. I know Worst had some misfortune, but I would have expected them to finish higher, kind of where Vash and Backstedt ended. Backstedt fell back a bit in the race. This was also definitely not a course for her. Sand is the biggest weakness of Backstedt. Probably also the biggest weakness of Vash. So I think they can take some encouragement from these results. Next week's course in Dublin should be really, really good for Backstedt. I'm super excited to see what she can do there. I'm curious to see who is going to be traveling there. I heard Casasola might skip because she will be racing the Italian World Cup, which is of course in her home country. So I heard she was perhaps going to go training now, but that's not confirmed. So we'll know it when the start list get released. But What do you think, Issam? Surprisingly good by Casasola, Vash and Bakstedt, or disappointingly bad by Van der Heijden, Verdonschot and Worst?
I was asking myself the same question. But let me try to answer it live. I think that for Bakstedt and Vash, it was definitely a encouraging result, but it was also, I think, due to the nature of the course. I think that, as I said before, I think the power, if you're able to push good watts, you're able to get through the field with some power, you will benefit from it at the end of the race, and you will be a little bit more consistent, despite the fact that you are not that great in the sand. I think that for both Bakstedt and Vash, it's looking like they are on the way up, and the form is there. They are two, for Vash, I wouldn't even call her a talent at this point. I think that she's just someone that we have seen some great results, but we still need to see a little bit more. Bakstedt is a great talent, and I think that both of them are just on the way up. And for Van der Heijden and Verdonschot and Worst and Van Alphen, I mean, those women that we kind of expected to be a little bit more in the mix with Vash and Bakstedt, they were not able to do so. And the question is that because they are also in this phase of wanting to go on a training camp and, the form is just not really there anymore? Or is it just really sort of the standard at the moment, and now they're just not really able to match Vash and Bakstedt? And I think the answer might be a little bit in both. Both Vash and Bakstedt have had a relatively not that many races so far this season, so they are a little bit more fresh than the others. Obviously, they have their programs before they enter cyclocross. Bakstedt obviously had her problems before she came to the cyclocross season, and I think that it's difficult to compare them in terms of how different their approaches are going into today, and that makes it a little difficult and hard for me to conclude something. But I feel that we should maybe get used to Bakstedt and Vash being just ahead of these women, and on courses, particularly on courses that suits them a little bit more. I think that it's then, it's trouble for the women behind, and the women in front of them should get a little bit more worried, because I think they will be somewhat in the mix, especially at the first part of the race, or at least, they will try to get in the mix for solid top 5 finishes, podiums, and maybe even wins. Who knows?
I think those results will kind of be untangled by the next few weeks. It's repetitive by now, but I will say again, for Verdonschot, I'm quite sure that it's just disappointing bad at the moment. It's too much racing. She has almost 20 races. She's nearing the 20 already. That's a big ask, and I get that the points are important, but on the other hand, if you're a rider of the level of Verdonschot who finishes 5th at the World Championships, why are you that obsessed about points? Like, you're not going to drop out of the top 8, which guarantees you a front row call-up. So I don't really understand the necessity to go to the UK and Spain and do that many Belgian races. I would have chosen a different approach for Verdonschot, and we will eventually see what this means for Van der Heijden and Worst. Few results from outside of the top 10. Clausel in 14th and Foucounet in 12th. For Foucounet, quite decent. She's not an amazing sand rider, especially not a good cornerer. And I think those were kind of the results. Géry, who I was interested in the preview, finished 23rd. And Imogen Wolf finished 38th, which was not really a good result. She was much better in Kortrijk, where she finished 6th. That course was also much better for her. Now we're talking about the Brits. Cameron Mason did not have a good race today. He was 25th. Yesterday in Kortrijk, I would say he was all right. I would normally expect him to at least beat Anton Ferdinande, but it was not a horrible result. So I would say he's definitely still a little bit on the up. Issam, do you have anything else you would like to talk about?
No, I think we covered it quite nicely, to be honest.
Then I would like to give some results, not all of the results of this weekend, but I would like to go over a couple of interesting ones. So in the US, Vida Lopez de San Roman has finally started her cross season. She took the win in the women elite races on both days, defeating Caroline Mani and Kaya Musgrave. And in France, the venue Troyes of last year's World Cup hosted the third weekend of the Coupe de France, with David Menu beating Tony Perroux and Joshua Dubois on day one. Anne Morisson beat Amandine Mulet and Amandine Vidon on Saturday. On Sunday, Amandine Vidon beat Anne Morisson and Noémie Garnier. The men's elite race was won by David Menu ahead of Loris Rouillet and Clément Venturini, who started his season. And in the under-23 results, also some interesting things. Aubin Sparfel beating Matteo Jot and Leo Bisio. Bisio starting his cross season as well. The podium on the first day was Sparfel, Simon, Bisio. The French definitely have a lot of talent there, with also Corentin Lequet up in the mix. That's always something interesting to keep track of if the French riders are still doing well. In Kortrijk, the podiums were Iserbyt, Van de Putte, Van Toerenhout, Van Empel, Riberol and Van der Heijden. And those were kind of the results I wanted to go over. Issam, thank you so much for being here.
No worries. Thank you for having me. And on to next week. I don't know what you have planned, but we'll get through it.
I'll be traveling to Dublin. I'll be at the venue of the World Cup for all the races. We should be in for a very exciting day. We will see you guys then. This week there will be a special podcast of about an hour with 9 American 15-16 riders telling about their experiences racing in Europe. Then we hit Dublin. No Saturday race, so that will be relaxed for once. Thanks for listening. See you guys later this week. Goodbye.